Welcome everybody to the Storytime channel. My name is Steven, and today we have some malicious compliance stories. Before we get into the stories, I want to quickly announce that I'm giving away a $20 Amazon gift card to one random commenter that leaves a comment on any videos between Wednesday's videos and Sundays. You can comment as many times as you'd like, but the winning comment could also be pulled from my second channel, Storytime. So make sure to comment there as well for your best chances. That said, our first story of the day is by Je ne sais quoi. We both know you don't have the time to read all that. Give me my A. Some very short context to the story. I am not a natural citizen, I am a naturalized immigrant. I was 6 when I arrived and, understandably, had issues with the language and was assigned ESOL classes. Once those were finished, I made it my goal to never get anything below a 90% on any written assignment that was graded. And right up until college, I'm very proud to say I never got below a 94% on any papers or essays or other writing assignments. This happened a while back in college. I was forced to take a critical writing class and multidisciplinary too. It was fun getting to interact with people not in my major at the time. Unfortunately, it also meant I was grouped with people who had no idea what I was doing, nor did I know what they were doing. I get into this classroom and it's very open. The campus I go to is notorious for constantly renovating buildings. In the 7 years I was there was never a time that construction work wasn't on site. This building had just been erected and was a brand new science building. In said science building were some modular classrooms, the campus's attempt to change things up and get rid of the traditional lecture style of teaching by forcing the professors to walk among the students and teach. It was meant to encourage engagement and ease of access to students. Anyone who has sat in a lecture hall knows how irritating it is when Stacy in the middle of the row has a question during the exam, and the professor or one of their TAs has to grind their butt on everyone's exam and unceremoniously twerk on some poor soul's head as they squat down to listen to the question just so they can answer with, "Do your best," then leave their butt print on the exams again as they sidle their way out. This class began with the professor trying her best to be all fun and encouraging. Unfortunately, her method of fun and encouraging was to treat a bunch of adults like they were in grade school by making them all get up and share their names and fun facts at 7:20 p.m. After this debacle, when we're all ready to get on with this first class of semester, she launches into the syllabus and explains things. She states that, similar to standard lecture classes, which usually have 3 to 4 exams total, her class will have 4 papers to be turned in over the course of the semester. However, if the students weren't happy with their grade, they had the option to either rewrite 2 papers once over or rewrite the same paper twice if their second attempt didn't warrant a good enough grade. These rewrites could be submitted whenever the student wanted. It sounded like a fantastic idea, and the way she sold it, it sounded like a surefire way to not fail. I was confident that I didn't need those chances to rewrite anything, and after class, I asked the professor if I could set up a gamble with her. Given my schedule at the time, a warehouse job, a full-time job at an urgent care, another part-time job at a CPA's office, and a full college workload, I asked if I could use those rewrites as an extension. It wouldn't be indefinite, but rather each would count as a week. If a paper was due February 7th, I could theoretically use up the 2 rewrites and extend the due date till February 21st. Initially, she refused, but I explained to her that my father had just passed away, and given that it was sudden, we hadn't had the money available to pay the funeral home for their services and didn't have the money to travel back home to perform last rites, so I needed those 3 jobs to make ends meet. She understood and made a note due to my circumstances. However, she did have a noticeable change in her demeanor towards me after learning of what I did for work. I assumed she was just being somber due to learning about my father's passing. Well, in comes my first paper due. I did my usual thing. Wrote my paper, edited, gave it a day, reread and edited again, checked with rubric and re-edited. I was satisfied and turned it in, and a week later, she drops this paper with a big fat 68 on it. I'm like, excuse the freak out of me? I go and speak to her at the end of class, and she said I hadn't understood what the paper was about. She was asking the students to write about how some people in my field transition from school to career. I explained to her that it was very normal, and in some cases, expected, to post your school projects on your portfolio while you worked on other projects on your own to hone or improve your skills. She just wasn't able to understand that, and very tactfully but obviously said that I was just making it up because no company would hire an individual based on their school projects or homework assignments. She then stated that she would be canceling our agreement and going back to the original that she had with everyone else. I told her I wanted to discuss it with her more, but the only options she gave me were very conveniently during my work hours. I even asked for video calls, and she said her only available hours were during my warehouse work hours. Just the way she said it, I could tell she didn't think much of my choices in work. I accepted mostly due to exhaustion, but I was this close to getting through schooling with not a single paper below 90%, and I wasn't about to have this woman ruin it for me now. So I met with her at the end of the next class and asked her when the rewrite was due. She printed out a rubric for me to follow along. I asked her if she wouldn't mind signing it, because it has happened to a friend of mine before where she written something up following the rubric only to have the professor accuse her of falsifying a rubric to skate by. She agreed to sign. The new rubric for my rewrite stated that it had to be a specific font, single-spaced, a specific font size, references in MLA style, etc., etc., etc. The only thing that jumped out to me was a minimum of 5 pages. That seemed a bit strange to me because I've always used the subtractive method of writing. Word vomit on the page, then cut out what's redundant. I was intending on asking her about it and walked to her office, however she was in there talking about one of her students who was pretentious and trying to fit in where she didn't belong because she was just a labor class woman. The person she was talking to didn't sound all that comfortable, but she insisted on getting her little casual rage rant out, going on about how dare I try to readjust her rewrite plan to suit my needs, that it wasn't her fault I had to get crappy jobs, that she wasn't to blame, that I clearly didn't have the brains to do anything else or find a higher paying job. I didn't question it, however. I was told the due date was the end of the semester. She said she'd end the class about a week early, so she would have that week to read everyone's final papers and submit grades on time, and I was welcome to drop my paper off at any time during that week. I agreed, went through the semester and did perfectly fine on the other 2 papers, within my personal requirements, and settled in for the third. I was working on that paper as and when I could, emailing sections to myself when I was texting at work, or taking a break and pulling out my laptop. Finally, I was done. I walked into her office with about 18 hours left before grades had to be submitted. She had hitched on a friendly smile and said, "Hey there, I'm glad you came by. I was worried perhaps you didn't want to rewrite after all." "Oh no, I did. I was just at work is all." "Oh yeah, how's that going?" "It's fine actually. I'm getting promoted soon, so I actually have to go. I just came by to drop off my paper." "Oh, of course. The warehouse job?" "Yep. I swear that darn would have had me gritting my teeth if I didn't have what was in my backpack." She holds out her hand while looking at the other papers, sort of with this, "I'm so busy that I don't even have time to look at the likes of you" vibe. So I pulled out my paper from my binder and dropped all 36 pages of it in her hand. All single-spaced, all the correct font and font size, everything within parameters. She stared at it, then at me, and I just stared right back. "You said a minimum of 5. "What is this nonsense? I would never assign a minimum page count. It said maximum." If you check the 37th page, you'll see it's a copy of the rubric that you signed. And she flipped to it and realized she hadn't read her own rubric clearly. She done freaked up. So to save face, she started rifling through my pages and nodding in random bits here and there. "Okay, I'll give it a read and get your grade in by the end of tonight." I just rolled my eyes at her and said, "Look, we both know you don't have the time to read all that. Give me my A." We were both glaring daggers at each other, and she finally just gave in and scribbled 98% on it, and said she couldn't explain away an error-free 36-page paper when hundreds of other students submitted much shorter pages with grammatical errors. I agreed, packed up my stuff, and told her that I could have easily reported her and used the other professor as evidence of the way she was talking about me behind my back. She got so incredibly pale and tried to call me as I left. Which, I'm Indian. Academics is in my blood. Don't test me, you'll fail miserably. Anyway, I got my A. Let me ask you guys, would you ever, especially in the case of a revenge moment, have the stamina to write a 36-page essay? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by YG. Want me to just ignore your bug because you're slightly senior than me? Alright, bud. I work as a developer in a company that creates very fast automated systems for moving around money electronically. So obviously we have very strict testing and error checking for any code that goes in a production system. And I'm one of the guys who does this verification. So 3 months ago, I found a little bug in a patch that was written by this one other guy who had been working at the company for only a year longer than me. He has the title of Senior Developer, while I'm just a developer. It didn't really make any difference though, that was just something you get with a small pay raise once you do 3 years at the company as a developer. Anyway, I noticed this bug, email him and tell him about it so he can fix it and resubmit the patch. But he turns the responsibility on me, tells me his code is correct and that I'm just testing it incorrectly. I try to explain to him, but he doesn't budge. Tired of the pointless arguing, I suggest that we should clear it out with our project manager. At this point, he pulls the seniority card and says I should just do as he says because I'm his junior. Now that just pissed me off. This guy has absolutely no authority over me. Who does he think he is? Cue malicious compliance. I knew that the bug would not manifest itself immediately. There were certain conditions that had to be met for it to show itself in a production environment. And it didn't do anything wrong, it would just crash the system unexpectedly. I asked him one final time in the email thread whether he's sure he wants me to go ahead with the patch. He says yes. Alright, yay! Now we have buggy code running on a production machine which moves $1 million every minute. Nothing happened for 3 months, life was as usual. Then last week, it finally happened. Our system crashed. Well, we have protection set up for such failures that roll back the binaries automatically. However, the crash still cost the company a few hours of downtime, which means potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. The crash was traced back to the patch that Mr. Senior Developer had written. I had the email trail to absolve myself of fault. The resolution was quick, and needless to say, Mr. Senior Developer no longer works with us now. Always keep a trail. It doesn't matter whether it's physical paper or digital email. Always be able to cover your butt. You never know when that one email with that one written statement will absolutely save your job. And our final story of the day is by Bosifus X. Pay me 2 hours now or 40 hours later to fix it, plus $40,000 in taxes. A while back, I worked as a business consultant, certified public accountant, CPA, for young and startup companies. I was hired by a food delivery service, client, think Uber Eats type delivery, with a primarily corporate clientele. After setting up the client's systems for payroll, accounting, banking, but not order entry or billing, the owner installed a new state-of-the-art order entry and billing system. The new system seemed to work fine, but sales taxes charged to the clients were noticeably low and seemed to use the same rate for all cities and suburbs and counties, even though each one had different additional rates over and above the base state rate. When brought to the attention of the owner, he insisted the new software company knew what they were doing and were experts in food delivery service billing. Later learned it was a small boutique firm from out of state with a very good salesperson. When I requested access to the system to check tax rates, I was told not to waste billable hours on the new system because he was certain they know what they were doing and was unwilling to pay my exorbitant hourly rate to check something that was brand new. I explained that the taxes being collected were wrong. His company would be liable for any shortfall. Showing examples of taxes being underbilled were met with, "You don't know what you are talking about." As the business grew, my consulting hours dropped off, just reviewing month-end financial information with the client after closing the books each month, while making the requisite deposits of collected sales tax to the State Department of Revenue. Malicious compliance. I had no control or access over the tax rates being billed, but I did know the state frequently scheduled audits of new companies after their first year of operations. If the client was unwilling to pay for a few hours to check the system, wait until it was necessary to pay for 40 billable hours to handle a state audit. Lo and behold, on the 13th month after installing the new software, a notice was received from the state announcing an audit of the client's sales and tax payments being scheduled for the following week. To make a long story short, it was found that the new software did in fact only bill the base state sales tax rate, totally omitting both city and county taxes. The assessment for unpaid taxes, including penalty and interest, exceeded $40,000, not including my hourly rate to work with the state auditors. More billable hours were spent by me going back to the larger corporate customers and billing them for unpaid sales tax, recovering almost half of the assessment. Most were willing to pay after my threat to report them to the state for non-payment of use tax. The client blamed me for not insisting more strongly on changing the tax rates and terminated our relationship after it was felt as much as possible had been recovered from customers. One thing I've learned from my years on the face of this earth is that oftentimes the shiny brand new things can very often have a bunch of issues involved. And although it might seem like the perfect thing that'll do everything you want it to do and more, oftentimes it'll have weird quirks or bugs and you're just completely SOL. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.